everyone, it's Margaret Manning here, and welcome to 60 and Me. This is the place where women over 60 come to be inspired. My guest today is Allan Roth. Allan is the founder of Wealth Logic. He has been in the investment world and in corporate finance for 25 years, and he understands more than I ever will about money. He knows all about making good investment decisions and really planning for your retirement. So first of all, welcome, Allan.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. We're going to talk in this discussion about the period of retirement where you're basically within a year or two of retiring, maybe, or in that transition where you've given up your job and you're now moving into retirement. That transition period. And I would love to get your thoughts on how women in that period can actually make the best of the way they spend money and the way that they invest it. So what advice do you have for us in that period?
Well, the first thing I would say is when you're close to retirement, get a handle on how much you're spending so that you can then compare that to how much you've saved up and have a reasonable understanding of whether or not you can retire in a year or two. So that's incredibly important.
Now, even though we say, retirement is sort of being redefined, people still do think 60, I'm going to retire. Or they feel like I should somehow I'm owed the right to retire. But as you say, if you haven't saved or you haven't got money coming in, maybe you've got to delay it a little bit.
Yeah, your portfolio, your savings is stored energy.
Yeah.
That's going to give you that freedom to do what you want with your life, and you have to make sure that you've saved up enough stored energy for that freedom, or change the way that you view that what you need to live on every year.
What would you say to someone though? I mean, we put an article on the website a few days ago about saving in retirement, and people said, "What is this thing called savings?" Like a lot of women and men have just not even saved a penny. They have no money saved going into retirement. I mean, what's your if someone came into your office, what would you say?
I would say you've got two choices. You've got to start saving now to have a modest retirement, or work the rest of your life
to have the bigger picture, to have everything that you want,
to continue spending what you're spending now. There's no shortcut.
Yeah. So what we were saying earlier about in the pre-retirement period, to actually think pessimistically and actually spend less. I mean, actually every month from your salary when you're getting it, put it away. Now, what happens now when, you just have to basically stop buying stuff, right?
Yeah, you've got to decide what, buying whatever is going to do, push back your retirement by, 1 month. You keep doing that, it's going to push it back by years and years.
And be at peace with that.
The trade-off you have to make.
And be at peace. What about, so in the United States, we've got a little bit of a security blanket with Social Security. You've got that option, and I think you can start taking it out at, is it 62 or 60 something?
62 is generally the earliest you can take.
And probably this is the case in other countries too, but let's talk for a second about the US and about your advice on when to take Social Security. Should they grab it at 62 or wait until 70?
It depends on, health issues, but probably 99% of the time, one is better off delaying Social Security, and here in the US, even to age 70. And part of the calculation that I do on that, what I show people, is in the United States we have something called a deferred annuity, where you pay a certain amount of money and then you get a cash flow that's called income. It's really mostly just return of your own money. I compare that to I compare what they'd have to give up in Social Security to what they would get in the future on that cash flow that's inflation adjusted.
Okay.
And show them they're really buying that annuity at roughly a 45% discount.
So an annuity is an investment, something that they can invest in an annuity, and you're saying that's the better thing to do early on, and then wait because you'll make more from that than if you took your Social Security early.
Exactly. Okay. And there's a lot of data that shows that wealthier people live longer. So if you can afford to delay Social Security, it means you've probably built up a nest egg. and that your life expectancy, all things being equal, is longer than average. So it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I suppose at that point, even working part-time and putting $500 a month or $1,000 a month in the bank for a year is going to give you at least something that that you may not be needing to depend on Social Security and have a little savings that you're putting.
Exactly. In transition, I'm a big believer in working part-time. So in other words, quitting your job and suddenly having all this free time, you're actually likely to spend more money, especially if you're healthy. You can travel, you can golf, you can, eat out and the like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer that working something that you enjoy more, maybe that you make a lot less on, helps you transition into that retirement, that financial freedom.
This is where we get into emotions, though, because people start to think, oh, well, I've worked all these years, I've worked, 40 years, and now I deserve to retire and do my thing, do my passion. And I guess what I'm reading between the lines that you would say, go for it, but make sure that the passion makes you money. Don't do things that are going to even drain more.
Make sure you can afford your passion, because the last thing you want to do is your passion for 2 years and then find that you've been out of the workforce and you've got to try to make a job with minimal wages.
Mm-hmm.
So do it in a smart way. Same thing I would do as a student when I taught college.
Mm-hmm.
Pursue your passions, but do it in a smart way.
Yeah. Make it worthwhile. It is really difficult, though, because I'm hearing the voices as we're talking of the women in our 60andMe community who really have had tough lives. They started working when they were 16, 17, and by the time you get to 60, you're kind of like, just give me my Social Security. And there's like an unrealistic, there's like reality hasn't sunk in, but maybe at this transition point is where it starts to sink in. And actually having a budget is really important.
And a lot of studies show that spending more money doesn't really make you much happier.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are happy living on a fairly modest lifestyle, then you get that financial freedom so much earlier and can pursue those passions if those passions aren't expensive.
Yeah.
If your passion is, owning a yacht and sailing across the world, it's going to take a lot of stored energy.
Yeah. So, okay. So in your 60s, you're in this transition period. You're either like you've given your notice and you're going to retire, or you say to yourself, in 1 year, I'm going to retire. That's your transition. What can they do in terms of investment? Maybe they've got a 401k in the United States, or they've got a slight, saving through their company. What kind of other investment would you recommend?
Well, saving, I'm a believer in saving some tax deferred, meaning in the United States an IRA or 401k,
Mm-hmm.
some tax-free,
Mm-hmm.
meaning a Roth vehicle, and some taxable, and that gives us some diversification against what Congress may eventually do to tax laws and such, which are obviously going to be in
Mm-hmm.
flux here in the United
Mm-hmm.
States.
Mm-hmm.
So, saving is good. And by the way, there's a lot of research. Terrence O'Dean and Brad Barber, Boys Will Be Boys, that show that women are much better investors than men.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's because we have more overconfidence, and that overconfidence tends to lead us to believe that we can predict what the next hot sectors or stocks, what the market's going to do, etc.
It's more of a game for men, do you think? Or a challenge,
Well, I think we are smarter than the market. And by the way, this is a generic across the board. Some women that have a lot of overconfidence, but it's really not fair. You guys make better investors. You live longer. It's not fair. I want to object on it.
Well, but we have to do the other things like raise children and have sort of cook the dinners, and it's all changing though, isn't it, Alan? It's really going to in a fascinating world ahead of us here. So
it is.
I think, but it's true. I think women, my answer would simply be that we know how to budget a bit better because we've had to buy, go buy the food and pay for, expenses, and just maybe a bit more, less, I don't know, maybe more pessimistic, less confident.
Maybe.
But also,
realistic, I think.
Yeah. So you think that looking at tax deferred investments, are you a fan of people trying to do their own joining online, doing their own stock, having an account and buying and selling stock?
I'm a believer in people doing their own investing, not their own speculation. Speculation is, I think, Eastman Kodak and General Motors, which were two of the 10 most valuable companies on the planet a quarter century ago today, are worthless. I think that is speculation, and it's exciting, but it doesn't work. Going to build a broad portfolio of a few index funds, which essentially own every publicly held company on the planet,
Right.
can do it right. That's the better way to do it.
Yeah.
That's investing. Buying an individual stock is speculation.
So it's easy to get seduced though into, like, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, all these companies. You hear Apple, they're doing so well, and it's like the goal is to get a few pieces of their business because they're bound to succeed. But you pointed out the world changes in unpredictable ways.
The world does change, and by the way, those companies you just named are growth companies. Those are the darlings. And then there are value companies, the beaten up companies. And Warren Buffett, for example, is a value investor. And over the long run, there's a lot of data that shows that bad stocks make better investments than good stocks, because the expectations for the good stocks are so high that it's hard for them to live up to. And the expectations for bad stocks are low, that it makes it easier for them to exceed the
Yeah, and also the media is pretty tough on those darling sites, aren't they? I mean, like when they do they announce their profits, and they're great profits, but not quite good enough, and they seem to be harder on them. I mean, I don't, maybe that do you think that's true? I'm just talking off the top of my head.
That's why a company like Apple can announce, record earnings, record sales, and the stock drops because the expectations were for even higher. And conversely, a company can announce, $500 million in losses, and the stock moves up because the market expected $750 million in losses.
It's well. So what about? I mean, those are like stocks, for investing in stocks. But what about? And I mean, I'm just obviously I have no experience in this myself because I've never done investing. But buying like bonds, things that give you a lower return, but they're more secure. Would you say that? I mean, I'm just trying to educate people as they go talk to a financial advisor to talk about stocks or bonds.
Yeah, and in my opinion, you need both. The purpose of bonds, by the way, fixed income, isn't actually income. It's the stable store of your energy, of your portfolio, of your financial freedom. And it has two purposes. One, to be there when stocks tank, and then two, to do what I call rebalancing. Let's say you had a portfolio that was going to be half stocks and half bonds. And you could think of it that you have an investment policy statement that you're going to stick to that. So that when stocks tank, let's say in 2008, that means that you have to sell some of those boring bonds to buy what has caused you so much pain, more stocks. And of course, the herd typically does the opposite. Stocks go up, they buy stocks, they plunge, people panic and sell. Buy high, sell low, and we keep repeating that mistake. By the way, that's across all cultures.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, in Europe, for sure, the same things are applying. So even though, and we're a global community, and you're talking in global terms, which I think is great, but there's some basics, that apply everywhere. I think for women in their 60s, this is a really challenging time, though, because I think the bubble has burst, and they really did think that they were going to do better. And like you mentioned, 2008, I think a lot of people worldwide, suffered because of that, and money they'd saved for retirement is gone. So I think now this is the time, like you say, you've got to really look at your costs and, try your best to keep working part-time or full-time. Be realistic. It's not going to happen in your early 60s if you lost it all in 2008.
But on the other hand, dying with the most money is not the goal either. So it's a trade-off between pursuing what gives your life meaning and happiness and being realistic.
Well, but like you said before, I think that the key things is like if you're going to spend to almost the limit, you got to keep your costs down, and just buy cheaper and less stuff. And fortunately, what happens? I mean, I don't know whether it's happened to you yet, but I just don't want things as much anymore. I look around and I think I don't need another set of dishes or like blue Christmas lights instead of pink Christmas lights.
And then, quite frankly, I get a lot of satisfaction out of never paying retail for expensive things. Like, I like to stay in nice hotels, but I always try to get them at a 50% discount. My preferred is Priceline,
Using
which
those,
is,
yeah.
yeah. And I get satisfaction out of knowing that, I'm paying less than probably anyone else in that hotel
Yeah.
and the like. So it's not even necessarily deferring, staying in a flea-ridden motel
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah,
It's getting a good price on
yeah.
something.
It's being smart and using the technology that we've got to find these deals, because there's airplane tickets and all kinds of ways you can save a ton of money just by knowing when to do it, and the resources are there.
Yeah, absolutely. The web has really changed things, and quite frankly,
Yeah.
some people like playing chess, Sudoku. I like doing a little research and getting a good bargain. Not buying the shampoo for $4 instead of 5, but on bigger ticket items.
And that's actually where you can make the saving. The other thing I wanted to mention was that when you get into this transition time, you're actually dealing with new costs as well. I mean, it's not even a matter of just managing with what you've got. You have to anticipate a few things. I mean, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for instance, in the United States, if you retire before 65, you're going to have some very expensive health care to pay for.
Yeah.
And irrespective of where you live, you'll have more time on your hands to travel and spend money. So costs typically do go up when people retire early and they're younger.
And there's some things like even travel insurance that goes up dramatically when you get older. So
Yeah. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of travel insurance.
Okay, let's tell us about that. Tell me why.
Well, I believe you want to insure for what you can't afford to lose. So, for instance, if you bought a $100 electronic gadget and they sell you an extended warranty for $30, 30 euros, whatever, you're buying insurance. And should I break it, one day, 1 year and 1 day after I bought it, the day after the warranty expired, I could probably buy it on the web, eBay, whatever, for $50.
Yeah.
I'm not really buying much.
Yeah.
Life insurance or something where the family would, have to drastically change their lifestyle, that's important. You want to insure for what you can't afford to lose.
Yes.
Liability insurance on a car, something you definitely want. God forbid, should you hit a school bus?
Yes.
Am I depressing all of your listeners?
Well, I'm getting pretty depressed. No, but I think what we said in another video was that, pessimism is a powerful thing. And actually it has the opposite positive effect if you're pessimistic. And if you look for what could go wrong and be prepared, not be depressed or morose about it, but just be ready, you then sometimes can change your behavior at the place that it makes a difference, like not spending so much money.
And moderation is important. I once had a couple that came to me. They were insured for every possible thing that could go wrong. Unfortunately, they would never hit retirement because they were paying, out so much in insurance premiums every year.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got us through transition, and I think this is a good place to stop and reflect on what we've heard, and to think about, cutting our costs, getting a budget, holding off on Social Security, all those things that you've discussed. And if you can think of any resources that we can add to this particular interview, that would be wonderful about this transition period. And we'll go on to the next and another video about you're in retirement and then what?
Terrific. Can I plug one book if it's not
mine?
mine?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
One 100-page, incredibly simple book, just Can I Retire by Mike Piper.
Okay. Is it a good one?
It's a very good one, and it's very simple, easy to understand, and I think will really help your viewers.
Cool. Well, we'll put a link to that in the article, because that's super helpful. You've been great. I love your insights. Thank you very much, Allan.
Thank you, Margaret.
Take care. Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our 60andMe YouTube channel and also visit our website. We are a strong and dynamic community of women over 60. We're challenging aging stereotypes, and every day we share fascinating stories, interesting questions, and great conversation.